All right, so understanding Saturn and remedies, right? This is the first part of it. So I don't really know how many parts we will have, because this topic, if you look at it, this can go on and on and on. All right, so let's see how much we can cover. So what we will learn are some esoteric secrets of Saturn, but more than esoteric secrets, these are things that we yes, you will get, Dr. Sam, you will get. So these are, you know, these are the things that people must know regarding Saturn, because what has happened over the last few years is that everyone is trying to read Vedic astrology or trying to study Vedic astrology through various forums or through hearsay or through a word of mouth process. Okay, so that is not really the way to study Vedic astrology, right? And even the most famous or the most accomplished astrologers have been responsible for making these mistakes. Okay, so let's see what we can do. Right? Let's look at the core basics of Shani Maharaj. So the first misconception I'm trying to clear out here: Saturn is the most dreaded of planets, the great malefic, not the greatest. All right, so I'm saying that Saturn is a great malefic, but it is not the biggest malefic, right? So why do I say that? Because Saturn, for a planet to be classified as the biggest benefic or the biggest malefic, you have to understand the basics. Why this planet is being called the biggest malefic, or why this planet is called the biggest benefic, right? So if you look at it, the signs that we speak about, the signs of the zodiac. So there are, amongst the 9 planets, there are 3 sattva grahas. Okay, there are 3 sattva grahas, that is Surya, Chandra, and Guru. Okay, these are the 3 sattva grahas. Although Surya is it is regarded as a krura, not a malefic, it is regarded as a very cruel planet, but Surya at the end of the day is a sattva graha. And amongst those sattva grahas, only Guru can be retrograde. Surya and Chandra, they are never retrograde. Okay, that is the first thing. That is the first thing we need to understand. Then comes the Rajas grahas. Okay, the Rajas grahas are Buddha and Shukra, right? Those are the Rajas grahas. And finally comes the Tamasic grahas, which are Shani, Mangal, Rahu, and Ketu. Okay, so these are the Tamasic grahas that we can looking at. All right. So now, based upon the nature of these planets, based upon Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, the signs ruled by these planets will also be Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. So since Surya, Chandra, and Guru, they are Sattva grahas, the signs ruled by them, that means Surya rules Simha, Chandra rules Chandra rules Cancer, and Guru rules Sagittarius as well as Pisces. So these are the 4 Sattvic signs that we have among the 12 zodiacs. Leo, Cancer, Sagittarius, and Pisces. These are the 4 Sattvic signs. And then the signs ruled by Buddha and Shukra. Okay, the signs ruled by Mercury and Venus. What are those signs? They are Taurus, that means Rishabha. Then comes Tula, that means Libra. Then comes Kanya, that means Virgo. And finally comes Mithuna, which is Gemini. So these signs, that means Libra, Taurus, Gemini, and Virgo, these are Rajasic signs. Okay, and then the signs that are ruled by the Tamasic grahas. Of course, Rahu and Ketu does not have any. They have not been given complete lordships. They have been given partial lordships of Aquarius and Scorpio, respectively. Okay, so but the other 2 Tamasic grahas, that means Shani and Mangala, right? That means Shani and Mangala. They rule what? They rule Aries. They rule Scorpio. And similarly, Mangala rules Aries and Scorpio. That means Mesh and Vrishchik. And Shani rules Makara and Kumbha. That means Capricorn and Aquarius. So now what happens is that these 4 signs, okay, that means Aries, Scorpio, Capricorn, and Aquarius. These 4 are the Tamasic signs amongst the zodiacs, right? Amongst the 12 zodiac signs. So for a planet to be, classified as the most benefic or the most malefic, you have to see which planet exalts in which sign. Okay, So Shani is a Tamasic Graha, but where does it exalt? It exalts in Tula, which is a Rajasic sign. Now, if you compare that to Mangala, Mangala is a Tamasic Graha, and it goes and exalts in a Tamasic sign of Makara, that means Capricorn. So at the end of the day, although Shani has a Shani has a notorious reputation of being the most malefic graha, or some people will say it is Rahu who has the notorious reputation of being the most of being the most malefic graha. What happens is that at the end of the day, it is Mangala who can truly be called as the greatest malefic. It is not Saturn. Okay, that is the reason I said it is a great malefic, but not the greatest malefic. Similarly, if you extend this concept to the benefic planets, right? So if you look at the benefic planets, what are the benefic planets? The benefic planets, the Sattva grahas as well as the Rajasic grahas, they are the benefics. Okay. So if you look at Surya, it exalts in a Tamasic sign of Aries, right? If you look at Chandra, it exalts in a Rajasic sign of Vrishabha. If you look at Shukra, it exalts in the Shukra, it exalts in the Sattvic sign of Meen, that means of Pisces. And if you look at Guru, it exalts in the it exalts in the Sattvic sign of what? Of Karka, right? Now there is a comparison. Shukra, it exalts in the Sattvic sign of it exalts in the Sattvic sign of Meena, that means Pisces, and Guru, it exalts in the Sattvic sign of Cancer. So who amongst them is the most benefic? In that case, you have to understand the nature of you have to understand the nature of Karka as well as Meena. So in case of Meena, what happens is that Ketu has the Mool Trikona there. Okay, so it becomes comparatively less benefic as compared to Karka, whose rulership lies absolutely with Chandra. So the rulership of Cancer is absolutely with Chandra, but the rulership of Meena is with, of course, it is with Guru, but it is also the Mool Trikona sign of Ketu. So that is the reason it is Guru who can be considered to be the greatest benefic. All right. So this is a very basic concept that I'm trying to clear out here. I hope everyone has understood this. Okay. It's a geometrical figure, half a circle hanging from a cross, has something intimidating about it. I'll come to the symbols of the graha. So if you look at the symbolism of the planets, the symbolism of Saturn will have something intimidating. Of course, I find it intimidating, but I don't know about others. I'll come back to the symbols. Okay. So you first have to, because the Earth is the center of reference for all our astrological studies. So we also have to understand the symbol of the Earth, which is just an oval. Okay, the symbol of the Earth resembles that of Saturn, but has a circle instead of an arc. This difference is vital. So you have to understand the difference between how the Earth what you are doing on the Earth and what Saturn wants you to do. Okay. So these are the symbols. Okay, so if you have a pen and paper with you, just draw these symbols, or you can just take a screenshot so that we can come back. You can come back to it when I give the reference. Okay, so these are the symbols. And if you want to take up Vedic astrology as a serious form of study, it is very essential that you are familiar with these symbols. All right. So if you can draw, just draw it. If you cannot, then just take a screenshot of the same. All right. So the emblem of the Earth, as I said, the emblem of the Earth is just an oval. You see the emblem of Surya, right? You see the emblem of Surya. It has a small dark circle inside the bigger circle, right? So the emblem of the Earth is just the circle without the inner circle. Okay. So the emblem of the Earth, that is the full circle, indicates the wholeness of manifestation under the constant sway of polarized forces. So this is something that is important to understand. Okay. So when we speak about the process of manifestation, right? When we speak about the process of manifestation, it means as human beings, we are constantly in the mode of creation. Okay, we are constantly in the mode of creation. Now this is a bit of heavy stuff. Okay, so if you are feeling a bit sleepy, or if you're distracted, it will pass over your head. So just just listen to this carefully. So as human beings, when we speak about the wholeness of manifestation, it means we are constantly in the process of creating. We are co-creating along with the universe. Okay, we are co-creating, right? We are co-creating, and through what we are co-creating? We are co-creating with our subconscious mind, right? But then, if you have studied deeply about the subconscious mind, what you will also understand, or what needs to be understood, is the fact that suppose you are trying to manifest a situation. Suppose when you wake up in the morning, all right, there is a lunch at the office, right, and you are thinking about that lunch, what food would be served there. At that point of time, there is also an opposite situation which is created, that the lunch will be cancelled. Okay, so whatever you're trying to manifest, the opposite situation of the same is also created. This is something that you need to understand, because without the polarization, right? I've spoken about the constancy of polarized forces. Without that polarization of the opposite situation being created, the process of manifestation cannot happen. Okay, it cannot happen. And this is a divine purpose. All right, suppose you want to go to, suppose tomorrow you have a plan to go to Mumbai. Someone has a plan to go of going to Mumbai. Then it is also true that the opposite situation is also playing at some point, right? That means there is a possibility that the trip to Mumbai will be cancelled, even if that possibility is 0.001%, but that possibility exists. And that happens due to the polarized nature, or the polarized nature of the forces that constantly manifest our destiny, right? So there is a divine purpose in earthly manifestation. So if you're born on this planet, there is a divine purpose. Okay, we all have been reading a lot of materials. We have been actually searching for our divine purpose, and that search continues till the end of the life, right? But we actually do not know what that purpose is, right? So it's a very easy answer. I don't want to go into it, but suppose someone wants to know, then maybe you can ping me personally. I'll explain it in details. Or if everyone wants to know, maybe we can have a bit of a discussion about that divine purpose later on when we complete this session on Saturn. Okay, we'll just wait for everyone to say if everyone wants to know what it is. All right. Now, just look at your screenshot that you have taken. In the case of Saturn, the cross with an arc below it indicates a divine pressure on the evolving individual to move from the gross material environment to his spiritual goal. That means, as individuals, we are constantly evolving, right? But the point is, our brain is almost 99% reptilian, isn't it? Our brain is almost 99% reptilian. So that reptilian brain will always think in terms of the material environment, right? But then Saturn, what it does is that it puts a pressure on us as evolving individuals to move from the gross material environment to the spiritual environment. Right? So Saturn, right? Saturn puts a pressure on the individual to move from the material to the spiritual, and this pressure can be, this pressure. Just a minute. Just a minute. Yes, I'm sorry. So this pressure to move on the individual to move from the material to the spiritual can be very excruciatingly painful for the mind. Do you know why is that? It is because the spiritual cannot be measured tangibly, right? We can always measure the material in terms of, tangible things, right? What is the house that you have? What is the car that you have? What is the amount of money that you have in your bank account? So all those have all those things are tangible. But when we speak about spiritual progress, it is very intangible. And once we move into the domain of something that is intangible, the mind finds it very difficult to comprehend. Okay. So the arc, just look at the diagram, the arc curving to the right points to the path of return in the soul's pilgrimage. So that arc in Saturn symbol, right, which curves to the right, it points to the path of return in the soul's pilgrimage. That means our soul is constantly, the pilgrimage word used here means our soul is constantly on the journey of evolution. Okay, so I'll discuss this in detail in the Panchanga class. In the next class that we are having tomorrow, I'll discuss how the soul gets attached to the material world, and it is our responsibility to push it back to the spiritual purpose. So So this refers to the spiritual pilgrimage, to the pilgrimage of the soul. Okay, the process of the soul journey from the material to the spiritual is regarded as pilgrimage, right? So Saturn, he pushes us to return to that spiritual path, right? Okay, so the linkage of the cross with the arc symbolizes the beginning of the spiritual process. So if you look at the symbol of Saturn carefully, you'll see that there is a small cross. Okay, so that symbolizes the beginning of the spiritual process. Okay, and this is the cross of Jesus. Okay, we have all seen the we have all seen the crucifixion of Jesus, isn't it? So that was extremely painful for him. So that cross, that cross is something that is very important in this analogy. It symbolizes the beginning of the spiritualization process. As I said, that is extremely painful for the mind, because the mind cannot comprehend. The mind cannot comprehend, or the mind cannot measure the spiritual progress that we make. So this is the basic feature of Saturnian impulse. So now you understand why Saturn does things that are commonly associated with it. Okay, Saturn loves to give you pain, isn't it? Saturn loves to give you pain. So this is the reason, right? So Saturn produces psychological limitations. The urge to experience greater freedom on various planes of existence is intensified under Saturn, right? So what happens as as our mind is infinite, right? Our mind is infinite. Our mind has infinite dreams. Our mind has infinite goals. Our mind has infinite desires. So for achieving those infinite desires, it requires that our body also becomes infinite. But what happens? We are put under certain physical limitations. Yes, the mind wants to fly, but the body cannot, because that is a physical limitation we have as compared to the birds. So because the mind wants to do certain things that are physically impossible for the body, so with the passage of time, those physical limitations tend to become psychological, and that comes under the domain of Saturn. Okay, and what Saturn does is that he intensifies those psychological limitations, right? The urge to experience more freedom. Okay, so suppose someone wants to earn more money. So why does someone want to earn more money? Why do people need money? Because we have a perception that more money is related to more freedom, and that is true to a certain extent. It is very much true. Okay, more money is related to more freedom, right? But what happens is that we have certain limitations. We have limitations of place, we have limitations of skills, we have limitations of resources. So at the end of the day, those limitations slowly become psychological, and what Saturn does is that he intensifies those limitations to show the futility of all these things that we want on the material plane. All right. However, if the physical sheaths are not yet ripe enough to satisfy the urge, the individual discovers his limitations. So here we are speaking about physical sheaths. Okay, so I'll discuss this in more details in the Panchanga class. So what are the physical sheaths? So for simplicity, just consider that the body that you see is not the only body you have. Okay, the body that you see is not the only body you have. This is the food body, right? Our physical body is the food body. We are sustaining this body for food. Okay, but if you stop having food, suppose you don't have food and you stop having water, after 7 days this physical body will collapse. So beyond this body there lies three other bodies. Okay, this is the physical body, which is known as Annamaya Kosha. Okay, then there is the mental body, right? There is the mental body, which is the domain of the mind, that is known as Manomaya Kosha. Okay, so sheath is a kosha. The Sanskrit word for sheath is kosha, right? Then comes the pranic body, which is beyond the mind. Okay, which is beyond the mind. That is known as pranamaya kosha. That is the domain of the prana. Okay, so prana has a lot of implications. If one is interested in studying medical astrology, we have to spend maybe one class or two classes to understand what prana actually means, right? So prana is not only the breath, prana is the life process within you. Okay, and then beyond the life process, there is another body which is known as Anandamaya Kosha, which is also known as the bliss body, right? So there will be thousands and thousands of gurus in India. There will be thousands and thousands of people in India who have experienced enlightenment, and they have accessed that light body. Even if that access has happened for maybe 1 minute or maybe 30 seconds, but that access has happened. Anyone who has got enlightened will access that body. Okay, that is known as the Ananda Maya Kosha. Okay, so that is beyond everything. Okay, that is beyond everything. that is when you realize that the world is inside you and not that you are inside the world. Okay, if someone has access to that Anandamaya kosha, you will understand that the world lies inside you. It's not that we are inside this world, which we commonly perceive or which we commonly believe. Okay, so if these physical bodies are not yet right, if it is, if the individual does not experience the, the expansion, right, even if the individual is not able to expand his desires, if the individual is not able to expand his mind to satisfy his desires, what happens? You discover your limitations, right? For example, just at a very gross level, suppose you want to travel to the US, right? You want to travel to the US, what happens? You have to worry where to get the tickets, right? And before getting the tickets, you have to worry whether you will be able to manage to get the tickets or not, isn't it? So these limitations, these limitations can be very excruciatingly painful for the individual, right? So this produces conflict and the individual feels tortured. So this is what happens once you understand or you discover your limitations, right? There is a lot of turmoil in the mind. So there is turmoil in the psyche, right? The psyche is the mind, and the mind is agitated, of course. So once this, during this churning process, the cross has its full sway. So it seems when you understand, when you undergo this turmoil in the mind as well as in the psyche, what happens is that you feel that you are pinned to the cross and you have nowhere to go. All right. So this is how Saturn restricts. Yes, you must have heard that Saturn is a very limiting graha. It represents limitations. It represents restrictions. So this is how, this is how Saturn restricts you. So when this experience is understood by the soul, there comes quietude, which gives direction to the spiritual journey of the individual. So once the individual understands that it is futile to struggle with the inner turmoil, it is futile to struggle with the inner conflict, there is nowhere to go, you cannot do anything, then comes a sense of quietude. Sense of quietude means there comes a sense of acceptance. And have we not heard everyone saying, have we not heard everyone, our elders saying that you should accept everything that comes your way? This is the ultimate Vedanta, the end of spiritual wisdom, the end of the Vedas. That means everything that comes to you should be accepted, whether good, whether bad, everything should be accepted. And once you have that attitude, there comes a sense of quietude. That means the mind becomes very, very quiet. And once the mind becomes very, very quiet, the turmoil dies. Okay. So this state is represented by the ark hanging below the cross. So once the process of crucifixion is complete, the body gives up, right? You have seen how Jesus's body gave up once the pain was over. It was just like he was hanging from that cross. So Saturn does the same thing to you. Okay, once the mind gives up, the body also feels relaxed. And this you will also see when you come across someone who has died out of a very terrible disease. Suppose someone has cancer and that person is living. Okay, someone is in the last stage of cancer and that person is living. You will see a lot of stress, a lot of unbearable pain reflecting on the face of that person. But what happens after that person dies? The same person, after he or she dies, the face will become very, very peaceful. Yes, the face of that person will become very, very peaceful. So it is the same thing, because what happens is once the mind becomes quiet, right? Once the pain ceases, there would be a very relaxed body hanging below the cross. That means the body would also become relaxed. Yes, you do not have to look at a dead person to experience this. Suppose, just imagine the time when you wanted something very desperately. Okay, you wanted something very desperately. What happens? That desperation would not allow you to eat, it would not allow you to sleep, it would not allow you to sit peacefully. But once you have that thing, right? Or suppose you understand, once you understand that that thing is out of your reach, two situations can occur. If you are desperate for something, you can either have that thing or you'll understand that the thing is out of your reach. So once that acceptance comes, what happens? The body suddenly becomes very, very peaceful. You suddenly start feeling very, very peaceful from inside. Why? Because the mind has given up on that goal, right? So you see, you see a lot of new age bullshit which says that no, there should be goal setting, there should be this, there should be that. That of course comes from Western wisdom, right? Goal setting is a completely, it's a completely Western idea that you should constantly have a goal to move in life. But once you have a goal, what happens is that you remain agitated. This is something that is known as the rat race, right? since your childhood, your parents put in the idea that you should be, you should be a topper in everything, you should be the best in everything you do. But against whom you are competing? There is no one to compete. And once you understand that there is no one to compete, but the only competition is yourself, then you start becoming the best version of yourself, right? So if you look at someone who has achieved a lot, all right, if you look at someone who has achieved a lot in unimaginable terms, you will understand that the only person those people compete against is themselves. They are constantly trying to better themselves rather than competing against others. Okay, all right. Now, redemption from Saturnine affliction lies in understanding the limitations imposed upon the soul during its incarnation and its need to function within the given parameter. So what happens is that once Saturn afflicts the individual, you need to understand how to get out of that affliction, right? So to get out of the affliction, you need to understand what limitations are there on you. And we all have our limitations, right? For example, someone who is born in Africa will have a lot of limitations as compared to someone who is born in America, right? Someone who is born in the village will have a lot of limitations as compared to someone who is born in the city. Someone who is born with a big, in a big house with a lot of servants or a big car will have a lot of advantages as compared to someone who has been brought up in poverty. So once the person understands these limitations, right, that understanding is the cure to all afflictions that are caused by Saturn, right? And what is the understanding? That understanding is acceptance. You have to accept that you have this limitation, right? And once you accept that limitation, then what happens? The magic starts to happen. Saturn starts to show you ways how to come out of that limitation. Okay, but the first thing is to accept, which we as human beings, we do not do, right? So the process of spiritual growth certainly involves suffering, and all spiritual aspirants have to confront it as their inevitable ordeal. So if you want to grow spiritually or for a spiritual experience, there has to be suffering on the mental plane or on the material plane, right? And this is common with all, with all the great spiritualists, with all the gurus, with all the people who have, who have experienced that oneness with God, or all the people who have been enlightened, right? So if you look at the horoscopes of those people, even if you look at the horoscope of Ramana Maharishi, you will understand that how a very gentle Atma Karaka like Chandra has caused him to lose his family, to lose everything that he possessed, so that he could move on to the spiritual path. Okay, so without a bit of a tragedy, without a bit of suffering, spiritual growth is impossible. And that is something that we all understand, isn't it? You remember God only when you are sad. You do not remember God when you are happy. It is impossible for us, right? It is impossible for us to seek the divine when you are very, very happy, because when we are happy, it seems that the sun is revolving around us. But once things go wrong, or once things start collapsing around us, then we seek answers to our questions, isn't it? So without some amount of suffering, spiritual growth is impossible. So in case of Saturn, however, there is a significant difference from other forms of strain. So Saturn, of course, causes strain, but there are certain differences, right? So the limitations imposed by Saturn arise from the crystallization of the material sheaths. So we already have, limitations coming from the koshas. But what Saturn does is that he crystallizes those things. Crystallizes means he freezes it, right? And Saturn, if you look at it, it is the furthest planet from the sun. That means Saturn, of course, will be very, very cold, right? Ice is something that is represented by Saturn, isn't it? Ice is something that is represented by Saturn. So at the end of the day, what happens is that Saturn crystallizes the material sheets. So crystallization of the material sheets, this is very important to understand if you are studying dashas, right? Every time there is a Saturn period or a sub-period, that means Saturn Vimshottari Mahadasha or Saturn Vimshottari Antardasha, you will find that the flow of money is almost invariably affected, right? And this becomes very, very severe during a Saturn-Venus period, right? If you are running a Venus Mahadasha and a Saturn Antardasha, or a Saturn Mahadasha and a Venus Antardasha, this limitation is very much visible, right? Because Venus is your liquid wealth, it's the liquid cash that you possess, right? Is your liquid wealth. But what happens once Saturn's period comes along with Venus's period? That flow of money is crystallized. That flow of money stops. It means the water freezes through ice, and that causes a lot of problem to the individual. Okay. Yes. So what Saturn does is that he freezes things out, right? He freezes things out. So if there is a dasha of Saturn coming with the moon, what is moon? Moon Chandra is Jala. Chandra is water, but that water is not stagnant water, isn't it? That water is flowing water, right? Or similarly, Venus is Jala. Venus is water. So when a Saturn period comes along with a Venus period or a moon period, it freezes the flow of things. And by the flow of things, I tend to mean the flow of money. Okay, I usually mean the flow of money. So it is said, or Kalidasa has said in his famous, it is in his famous book Uttar Kalamrita, he says that, he says that a Saturn Venus Dasha or a Venus Saturn Dasha can be very, very terrible for the individual. And this is something that everyone will experience. There are certain, there are certain terms and conditions regarding when it becomes terrible and when it is good. Okay, but everyone will experience. Thus, everyone will experience this issue. Okay, so does this happen when Saturn is transiting Venus? Yes, it will. It will. It will. Certainly, it will. If Saturn is going over if Saturn is going over your natal Venus, these things will happen, right? So there is very little flexibility in the objective realm where the individual has to reap the consequences of Saturnine influence. It does not permit any kind of adjustment. So Saturn is a very hard taskmaster. It will not permit any kind of adjustment. Okay. Saturn wants things that repeat themselves. Saturn is fond of repeating repetitive things. That is the reason all laborers, all workers, right? All the people who are engaged in daily wage earning, those people will be under the influence of Saturn. And if you see those people, they will always be forced to do a certain thing in the same way day in and day out. So Saturn will not allow any kind of adjustment, right? And that is the reason remedies are so difficult in case of Saturn. So what remedies do is that they try to change the course of your action. Okay, they try to change the course of your action. But what happens under Saturnine influence? It does not allow you to adjust, right? It does not allow you to adjust. So you are not able to change. You are not able, no, you are not able to change your course of action, and as a result, what happens? Your life does not change. No, Dr. Saab, Saturn and Venus is not Yoga Hina Dasha. It does not mean denial. But Saturn and Venus is a very difficult conjunction to overcome. If someone has a Venus conjunct Saturn, he or she will have a lot of relationship problems. Okay, because I have mentioned this in my first class of Introduction to Vedic Astrology. Venus is the karaka for Sukha. Okay, the Sukha in the horoscope is represented by Venus. Saturn is the karaka for Dukha. Okay, the sorrow of the horoscope is represented by Saturn. So if these two come together, the individual will really have a hard time in overcoming the after effects or the effects of that conjunction. Okay. All right, so the soul's urge to spiritualize and to regain its natural freedom invokes the redemption of past karmas. So this is another important topic to understand. So Jyotish recognizes 4 types of karmas, right? And if you don't burn those karmas, what happens? Your spiritual, your spiritual pursuits will not yield any results. That is the reason we constantly complain why prayers don't work, right? Sir, Saturn exalted in Venus house, still it will give hard time. Yes, it will. That's why Saturn, Saturn is a planet that loves to party, right? And Libra is the house of party. So Saturn, he is a hard worker. Saturn, the profession of Saturn is that of an oil presser. He is always pressing oil. So after he presses oil, what happens? What happens is that he comes back home very, very tired, right? And Venus is the guru of the asuras. He rules wine, he rules all the exotic drinks. And Brihaspati is the guru of the devas. He rules the scriptures. So Saturn comes home. Imagine a person coming home and someone is giving you an option that, okay, you go out and party or you sit down and study the scriptures. What will you do? You will of course love to go out and party, right? So Saturn Venus relationship, although they are said to be the very best of friends, but that friendship is very, very exploitative in nature. Okay, that friendship is very, very exploitative in nature, right? So you cannot make any spiritual progress if your past karmas are holding you back. That is the reason sometimes you have to worship a deity for almost a decade to start getting results from the deity. Why? Because the past karmas, they hold you back from experiencing results. right? There will be some people who, who worship Krishna for maybe 40 days and they start seeing results, but others who will be worshiping Krishna for maybe 5 years or 7 years, they'll still not get results. Why? Because the past karmas are holding them back. Okay, and Saturn represents those past karmas. This is the reason why Saturn should never be worshipped, because the past karmas have only one job: to put restrictions, to hold you back. So if you're worshipping those past karmas, what are happening? You are not making any progress anyways. Okay, you may feel that, okay, you are doing a lot of good things by worshipping Saturn, but those past karmas are actually holding you back from, from redeeming your spiritual urge. All right. So the urge toward freedom is met by opposition from material conditions in the form of personal difficulties such as physical illness, environmental disturbances, psychological suffering, financial shortages leading to feelings of helplessness, and even the complete destruction of one's dreams. So these are the malefic effects that Saturn produces, right, to pull you out of your material comforts. Okay, Saturn, it has the job of pulling you out of your material comforts so that you're forced to go to the spiritual path. So what happens is that these are the difficulties that Saturn creates. He causes physical illness, he causes environmental disturbances. Now by environmental disturbances, I mean the environment of the home where you are staying. Okay, there would be arguments, there could be, there could be troubles related to your spouse, there could be trouble related to your father's health. So all these things, they disturb the environment. Psychological suffering, as I had mentioned, once suffering transcends the mind, it becomes psychological. The body also starts to suffer, right? If you are in a lot of pain, yes, if you're in a lot of pain, what happens once the pain transcends the body? It goes to the mind. You're not able to concentrate, you're not able to do anything. And financial shortages leading to feelings of helplessness. So this is the most common Saturnian affliction. Saturn always shows you some amount of penury. If you will experience this even if you are having a Saturn Atmakaraka. Okay, so a Saturn period, the Vinsotari Dasha of Saturn runs for how many years? It runs for 19 long years, isn't it? So during that period, if you have Saturn Atmakaraka, even if you are born in the wealthiest of families, you will see some sort of poverty or some sort of penury. It is absolutely the case. Okay, and the complete destruction of one's dreams. So Saturn loves to destroy your dreams. Okay, Saturn has no remorse, Saturn has no mercy, because if those dreams are are causing impediments in your spiritual growth, Saturn will come and destroy those dreams. All right. So the emerging spirit seeking liberation from the trammels of material existence gets stifled by the physical and psychological sheaths. So what happens is that it seems that the individual under Saturnine affliction is under some sort of a vice grip. Okay, the individual feels suffocated, right? So there is much emotional pain and intellectual frustration. So this will be experienced by, this can be confirmed by anyone who is undergoing a Saturn period, right? Even though even if Saturn is very well placed, or even if Saturn is in Digbala, there will still be emotional pain and there will still be intellectual frustration, right? Intellect is related to Mercury, isn't it? Intellect is related to Mercury, and Saturn and Mercury are regarded to be friends. But what happens? As I said, Saturn indicates limitations, Saturn indicates restrictions. So if Saturn and Mercury are conjunct, or if Saturn and Mercury are aspecting, in that case, what happens? Your intellect will be, your intellect will be directed, will be misdirected, or your intellect, the intellect will stop flowing. So that is how it works. So Saturn produces a radical reorganization in the various sheaths of the individual. The necessity for such change is felt as pain and suffering. So Saturn forces us to change. Okay, Saturn forces us to change. And any kind of change, whether if it is for good or for bad, it is always be painful for the mind, isn't it? Because that is the reason why the moon debilitates in Scorpio, because Scorpio is the house of transformation. And you can change only when there is a transformation, isn't it? You can change only when there is a transformation. So that transformation is felt as pain as well as suffering, right? So life seems torn by conflicts and the feeling of crucifixion arises. So this is very, very important to understand, right? So your life would be, Saturn would cause your life to be torn by conflicts, and that would be a feeling of crucifixion, because as I had said in the previous class on Panchanga, Saturn finds Digbala in the 7th house. So what happens? Why is the 7th house the point of Digbala for Saturn? It is because the 7th house is the house of relationships. And the worst feeling of suffering can come from relationships. Just ask someone who has had a breakup from a very beautiful relationship, or just ask someone who has lost his or her beloved spouse. That feeling of crucifixion can be unexplainable, right? So Beacon has asked, will Saturnian effects last long? If how much? So that will depend on what Saturn wants to do. So you understand what Saturn wants you to do, and once you do that, Saturn will stop troubling you. Okay. So under the influence of Saturn, we are forced to carry our cross in life. So this is very important to understand every individual, because Saturn produces feelings of loneliness. You will understand if Saturn is, if Saturn is hitting you left, right, and center, you will understand that Saturn is forcing you to carry your cross. And this is true for everyone, even if Saturn is not causing problems. As individuals, it is your responsibility to clean your backyard. Okay, to clean your backyard, right? No astrologer or no guru can clean the shit that is there in your backyard. As individuals, it is you who has to, who has to carry your cross. Carrying your cross means cleaning your backyard. It is you who has to set your life in order. All right. Others can only guide, but it is you who has to take action, because action is always individual. All right. Action is never, we have a term called collective action. Yes. But the point is action, all human actions are always individual. Okay. So the semicircular arc at the bottom of the cross links the lowest point of materiality, which also stands for death, with the highest point of creation, liberation, or immortality. So what happens? Yes, if you look at the diagram, if you look at the symbol of Saturn, it links the lowest point of materiality. So once once you reach the lowest point of materiality, you will understand that you are reaching death, right? It could be death of the body, there could be death of resources. But whether you speak of the body or whether you speak of resources, the lowest point of materiality is always death. Okay, and death is the highest point of creation, because to create something new, the old has to die, isn't it? To create something new, the old has to die. That is the reason Shiva is very feared. Yes, if you worship Shiva, Shiva will deconstruct you, he will not destroy you. Shiva is known as the Maheshwar. He is the Maheshwar, isn't it? He is not the creator, he is the destructor. But that destruction is actually deconstruction, right? He will make you unlearn all that you have learned unnecessarily. And that leads to creation, that leads to liberation or immortality, right? Once you understand that the material is impermanent, and what you have within you is something that will live on even after this body is no longer there, then you understand what immortality actually means. Okay, as human beings, we have a very skewed idea of immortality, right? Why do you think human beings have a urge to produce children? Because we feel that once we produce a part of ourselves that lives after we die, we become immortal. Okay, that is the reason, that is the basic urge of producing children that most people have. Okay, we feel that once we die, our child will live through us, right? And that will make us immortal. But this is actually a very skewed idea of immortality. Immortality means understanding or recognizing that there is something within you that does not age, there is something within you that does not die, there is something within you that has existed since the very beginning of creation and will exist till the end of creation, or till the end of the universe. That is the real meaning of immortality. Okay. All right, let's take a small break of 5 minutes. We can start after 5 minutes. So if you have to go for a drink or for some tea, we can do it for that. I'm pausing the recording. So the urge to transcend materiality comes voluntarily. It arises when a dam is put against the growth towards materiality. So what happens is that Saturn puts up a barrier against your dreams, against your desires, against your expectations. So once that barrier is put up, at one point of time, after struggling a lot, there would be an inner urge to transcend materiality. Okay, there would be an inner urge that would make you understand that whatever is material or all materialistic things are temporary. Okay, so the impediments to material enjoyment are experienced as frustration. So this often happens to each one of us, isn't it? If you want to achieve your material desires, what happens is that those material desires, if they are not fulfilled, it leads to a lot of frustration. So Saturn destroys the person's illusions. It burns up that which is transitory When our deepest fantasies are destroyed, there is intense pain, and this always happens, right? Suppose at the start of something new, if you are starting a new relationship, or if you are starting a new business, what happens? There is a lot of, there is a lot of hope, there is a lot of expectation, there is a lot of fantasy. But what Saturn does is that it ruthlessly burns up all those fantasies, all those desires, right? It burns up all those illusions, and that causes a lot of intense pain to the person. After psychological reorganization, there comes tranquility and an experience of one's inner strength. So after that, after you go through all the after you go through the psychological mess that Saturn puts you through, there would be the experience of your inner strength. Okay, after you, it's no the troubles that are created by Saturn, they are just like a train wreck. Okay, so if you are, if you come out alive of that train wreck, you would discover your true inner strength, right? So Saturn destroys the illusory and the transitory to let the individual gaze into eternity and to impart on him enduring strength. So this is the, this is the biggest gift of Saturn. Once he destroys everything that is impermanent, once he makes you understand that whatever you have is you alone, whatever you have is only your, it's only, it's only, it's you and you alone in this universe, and no one else is there with you. Then, then that enduring strength is imparted. Then you understand that, okay, I have strength to deal with this all alone. There is no one to help me out. There will be no one to help me out in the future. I have to cross my, I have to bear my cross alone. I have to come out of every difficulty all alone. So once you understand that you have to do everything alone, once you understand that you will not receive any support from others, then you have that strength which endures for a long, long time. So Saturn acts deeply and extensively. It affects the highest and lowest aspects of our nature. So no aspect of our nature is free from the influence of Saturn. It will act very decisively, right? So its impact can be endured only when the individual has the necessary strength and determination to bear it. So this is an important principle of Saturnian remedies. Once you do remedies, okay, Rajendraji has asked the question whether to, when praying to Shani, when doing Saturnian remedies, is it necessary to pray to Saturn, or to the, or to the other gods and deities who can control the afflictions? So Saturnian afflictions cannot be controlled. Saturn will do whatever it is meant to do. What you can only do is to, is to worship the deities that will help you endure what Saturn is trying to do to you. Okay, Saturn will always do what it wants to do, right? Saturn will always do what it is meant to do. But if you pray to those, if you pray to those deities who are believed to have the controlling power of Saturn, I'll tell you which deities, right? I'll tell you which deities. Those deities will actually, will actually help you to accept what Saturn is trying to teach you, to accept the lessons gracefully that Saturn is trying to impart through his hardships and difficulties, right? So Saturn is not a teacher who imparts his training gradually after preparing the student for the lesson. It wants results. Okay, so Saturn is a very result-oriented graha, right? Saturn is a very result-oriented graha. It wants results. Okay, it wants you to achieve greatness. It wants you to do that. That is the reason. From here comes the phrase that Saturn delays, but it does not deny. Okay, Saturn delays, but it does not deny. So it wants results. So Parashara says in his BPHS that Saturn is the only planet that follows the path of Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya, the path of Brahma, is to keep on moving. Okay, the path of Brahma is to keep on moving. An individual has to keep on moving, and that is seen in, even if you look at the nature of life, right? If you observe the nature of life, what happens? Life is all about moving, right? Life goes on. You may experience the greatest of pains, you may experience the greatest of tragedies, you may experience the loss of each and every loved one that you know, but still life has to go on, right? You may lose your hand, life moves on. You may lose your leg, life moves on. You may lose your vision, life moves on. So that is what Saturn wants you to do. It wants you to understand that life moves on. And once you understand that fact, then Saturn starts showering his grace. But to obtain the required results, Saturn can wait indefinitely. So this is a common feature with people who have Capricorn moon or Capricorn ascendant. They can keep on waiting for eternity. You have seen crocodiles waiting for their prey, isn't it? They'll be in that same position maybe for 3 to 4 days without, only by blinking their eyes, without even moving their body. That means they can wait indefinitely or their play. Okay, so Saturn in the same way can wait indefinitely, right? So this can be, this can be a good effect, and this can also be a bad effect, right? So whenever there is a possibility of the individual growing in the process, Saturn takes a chance. It is very determined in achieving its ends. So once Saturn understands that, okay, the individual has started understanding, once Saturn sees or once Saturn perceives that, okay, the individual has started understanding what am I trying to teach, then it takes a chance. Okay, it will inflict more misery. It can inflict more pain to ensure that you grow as an individual, right? So both the components of the symbol, the cross and the arc, represent the dynamic interaction of different forces in nature. So the interaction between the material and the spiritual is represented by the cross and the arc. However, when the individual fails to understand the lesson, it appears as a great calamity. And this happens to 99% of the population, isn't it? You see people losing their jobs, you see people losing their businesses, you see people coming on the street during a Saturn Dasha or Saturn Mahadasha. What happens? That happens only when, that happens to the outsider, it can appear as a great calamity. Okay. But what is actually appearing as a great calamity is actually a preparation for greatness, right? So the individual may become reactionary. Psychologically, he may become very negative. The experience learned during this period of frustration in the long run serves to develop strength. So the most common and the most common thing that is seen during a Saturnian affliction is that people become reactionary. People become very, very angry. People become very, very irritable, right? So Saturn wants you to respond. Saturn does not want you to react. And you can respond only when you accept everything, whatever comes your way, with an open heart, with open arms. Okay, if you have the attitude that whatever is coming my way, that is prasad from the Lord, you will start responding to situations. But what happens? We start reacting, right? We start reacting. So this is the psychological limitation that Saturn produces. So in the short run, the individual may become antisocial, immoral, and unspiritual, right? So if the lessons that are being imparted by Saturn is not understood, the individual may become antisocial, immoral, and unspiritual. So these are the lower attributes of Saturn. Okay, so if Saturn is debilitated in the sign of Aries, then you will find that the person who has a debilitated Saturn will be prone to these tendencies. Okay, so all of these are important aspects of Saturn. So the arc placed below the material cross shows that the spiritual unfoldment under Saturn is shadowed by the weight of material experience. So you have to understand the true futility of material experiences. Only then you can be spiritual, isn't it? I cannot tell a person that you should be spiritual without making him or her experience the pitfalls of material existence. Right? It is impossible for me. It is impossible for me to tell a person that the spiritual wealth is the real wealth that that the divine has for you. Material wealth is only temporary. That thing, that thing cannot be experienced unless and until the person realizes the futility of regular material existence. Right? So the essential feature of this Saturnine impact is that the lifestyle of the person changes externally, either for the better or the worse. So whenever Saturn is trying to teach you something, what happens is that our lifestyle will change, and that change will be either for the better or for the worse. Either the individual will become very, very humble, or what happens, the individual will be forced to commit suicide. Right? If you are not accepting what Saturn is trying to teach you, if you are not accepting what Saturn is trying to impart through its difficult lessons, at the end of the day, what happens? You can become antisocial, or you can become a great spiritualist, right? So internally as well as externally, there is a change. Saturn imparts a deeper understanding of the materialistic nature of existence. This understanding is closely connected with the trials and tribulations we meet in life. Yes, how to understand what Saturn is trying to teach us. I'll come to that. Of course, we're trying to go for that. So the wisdom produced by Saturn arises from confronting the difficulties in everyday life. So that means what? That means the more difficulties you encounter, the more wiser you become, right? We say that the world needs us. We have a common, that is the ego which says that the world needs us, right? But at the end of the day, it is we who need the world to evolve to become someone better who we already are, right? it is our, it is our responsibility to understand that the world is like a gym for us. It's like a mental gym. Without the difficulties that the world, without the difficulties that the world throws at us, we would not have become the people we are today. And that is true for everyone. Okay. So whatever trials and tribulations you meet in life, that is the grace of Saturn, because without those trials and tribulations, we wouldn't grow as human beings, right? Whatever approach we take to deal with those trials and tribulations, for the better or for the worse, it has contributed in our growth as human beings, right? So if life was all fun and rosy, life would be dull. Okay, life would lose its meaning, right? Life has a spice to it only because of the trials that we meet, right? And that is the grace of Saturn. So this wisdom is necessary to strengthen the soul so that it can complete its upward journey. So upward journey here means the journey of the Kundalini. Okay, so I'll explain to this. I'll explain you to this in great detail when we do tomorrow's class of Panchanga. Okay, how the soul manages its upward journey. So for the just for the sake of understanding, just know that this upward journey is actually referring to the journey of the Kundalini. Okay, so once there is an understanding of how we can operate in the world, or once there is an understanding of whatever Saturn is trying to teach us, we are moving towards our journey. We are moving in this journey towards the divine. That is the meaning of upward journey. Okay. So Saturn is known as Saneshcharaya, a teacher who moves slowly, right? So Shani is Saturn, and Acharya. Yes, Acharya means a teacher. So a teacher who moves slowly. Saturn also goes by the name of Manda. So he has the slowest movement among the visible planets, right? So we have a name for Shani in the Shani Ashtottari Shat Namabali. It is known as Mandaya, Om Mandaya Namaha. So he is the slowest moving amongst all the visible planets. So Saturn grinds, and he grinds very slowly but decisively, right? So slowly occurring events are generally imperceptible. From the moment of our birth, we are imperceptibly drawn towards our end or death. So this is an undeniable truth that even the most hardcore atheists will agree that once you are dying, what happens? You are constantly moving towards death, right? And that is one of the limitations we human beings have. We think that we are immortal. Even if people are dying around us, we think that we will never die. But once we have that understanding that our time on this planet is very, very limited, we would not, we would not do the things that we have been doing right now. Okay, we will not do the things that we will not do the things that are making us waste our valuable time on earth, right? So we human beings have a very false sense of immortality. We think that anything can happen to others, but nothing will happen to us. And this is our pitfall, right? This is our pitfall. This is the reason why we see people wasting time on frivolous activities that will not lead anywhere to their progress or to their growth. And when events occur slowly, they are generally unrecognizable. That is the reason Saturn, what it does is that the troubles from Saturn, they start very early. Okay, they knock on the door, but we keep on ignoring, right? And then all of a sudden, you see that planet on your face with all those troubles coming up, and then we have nowhere to go, we have nowhere to hide, right? So the movement towards death, the natural process of the physical decay, is so slow that it passes almost unnoticed, and this is true for everyone, isn't it? So just yesterday, you were a kid who was crying for a chocolate, and today you are a working person who is crying for a promotion, right? But each moment, right, each moment that we are living, that is actually a step we are taking towards death, because the body is physically decaying. So I've told this that in the Panchanga class that Saturn represents Vayu Tattva. And why Vayu Tattva is harmful? Because you know that even this is taught in your basic biology class also. If the air, right, the air we breathe interferes with the with the physical process. That is the reason you see the animals who live for who live for hundreds and thousands of years, the tortoises and the turtles, they take only 10 breaths per minute, right? But we human beings, what do? We actually take a lot of breaths. That is the reason the end goal of all meditative processes like the pranayama or the kapalbhati is to slow down the breathing process, right? So that Vayu cannot play its role. Okay, so Vayu is the agent of physical decay, and that Vayu is the domain of Shani, right? So even the growth of the personality experienced as the blossoming into youth and adulthood is a subtle movement towards annihilation. So as we grow from childhood to adulthood, we also have a personality, and that personality is the covering that we that we put on ourselves to cover our true nature. Even that is a subtle movement towards death. All right. So the trouble and wisdom produced by Saturn are so hidden from direct perception that they are attributed to other causes. And this is often the way. This is often the way of humans. We never, we never bother to look within. Whatever problems we are having, all the problems, they come from within us because of our sense of perception. But what happens? We start blaming the world. We start blaming others. We start blaming our friends. We start blaming our family. So we are, we are the troubles of Saturn are so hidden from direct perception that we never bother to look within us. Okay. So Saturn acts slowly because it operates on the soul nature of the person, on which alone such actions can make an imprint. So Saturn is, as I said, Saturn is prepared to wait indefinitely for results. So it acts slowly on the soul because without changing the nature of the person, the results that are produced by Saturn will never be accepted or will never be understood, right? So Saturn is a deep acting planet concerned with the permanent nature of the soul and in unveiling its original capacities. So the soul has no need for evolution. Okay, if you understand the play between Purusha and Prakriti, again, this is something that I'll discuss tomorrow in the Panchanga class. If you understand the soul, if you understand the relationship between Purusha and Prakriti, Purusha is something that is unchangeable, right? Purusha is the soul and Prakriti is the nature. So what is changing? The nature is changing around us, right? Our home environment is changing, our body is changing, the people we see around us are changing. But what is not changing is something that we have inside us that cannot be defined, that cannot be, that cannot be named, right? So that is Purusha. So Saturn is concerned in acting at the level of Purusha, right? It will change everything that is surrounding us. It will change everything around us. But what will happen is that once you understand the lessons that are being imparted by Saturn, you become quiet all of a sudden. Then you become the witness. Okay, the I or the ahamkara slowly dissolves, and you become the witness to everything that is around you. And that is what Saturn wants you to experience. Witness things, right? Saturn wants you to witness. Just become the witness. You don't have to understand who is the witness, but just become the witness. Okay. All right, so Saturn is linked to the sun and is considered as his sun, right? So this is very, this is very basic again. So Saturn and sun are considered to be enemies. But then, as I said, all the grahas in the horoscope are fulfilling the agenda of the sun. So the Vayu of Shani spreads the Agni of Surya. Yes, this is very true. The Vayu of Shani spreads the Agni of Surya. Without air, fire will die, right? And that air is supplied by Shani. Yes, the Agni of Surya will die without the Vayu of Shani. And this is one combination that you must check for, for ascertaining the Dhana Yoga of a person, right? So the Agni of Surya is represented by Leo. Yes, that is the 5th house. The Vayu of Shani is represented by what? By Aquarius, that is the 11th house. So if you want to see the earning capabilities of a person, see if there is a relationship between the 5th lord and the 11th lord. In that case, the income of the person will always be flowing. Okay, if there is a relationship between the 5th lord and the 11th lord, the person would have a very good income. Okay, so this is one Dhan Yoga out of the many Dhan Yogas that we can see. So the wisdom gained under the Saturnian impulse depends upon the deep contemplation of the various forces affecting life. So once you start contemplating on whatever has happened, right, whatever has happened under the impact of Saturn, then you start understanding, or then you start realizing the truths that life is wanting to teach you. Okay. So Saturn produces enduring results in terms of meditation, penance, contemplation, and release from desire and material achievements. So these are the higher attributes of Saturn: meditation, penance, contemplation, and release from desire and material attainments, all attachments. Okay, so these are the higher, attributes of Saturn, which is trying to impart to us. So Saturn has no hurry or immediacy of purpose. He grinds slowly yet surely, producing long-term enduring results. So whatever results that whatever results that Saturn produces, those are long-term. That is the reason why it says that whatever you gain during Sadhisati, those things usually remain with you till the end of your life, right? That is a common saying. So this is the basis of that saying. Okay. So Saturn is born of the union between the sun and Chaya, the shadow of Shan's wife. So sun actually had had a wife whose name was Samajna, right? So Samajna, she found it very difficult to endure the heat and light of the sun. So she created a shadow whose name was Chaya, and she ran away after after leaving Chaya with the sun. Out of that, out of that.
These kids, they learn nothing. Learn nothing, know nothing.
What is happening here? Just a minute.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Ставь
Just a minute. Somebody is on.
okay. Doesn't hold it, but it goes back and forth.
It's class is not even.
So, as I said, the Samajna, she left her shadow. She left her shadow with the with the sun, and she went away. Okay, she went away, and she was the daughter of Vishwakarma, right? The sun's original wife, Samajna, she was the daughter of Vishwakarma. So the sun, he had a child with Chaya. That means the shadow of Samajna, and that child was Saturn, right? So this allegory suggests that Saturn is the projection of solar radiance to the wheel of matter, which alone is capable of casting a shadow. So the solar radiation, okay, so the radiation of the sun passes whenever the radiation of the sun passes through, passes through the wheel of matter. What happens is that it casts a shadow, and this is something very basic, right? So Surya Narayan runs the universe with his offspring. So this is very important to understand. So Surya Narayan has several offsprings, and he runs the universe. That is the reason I said that Surya is the most important graha in the in the chart. Okay, Surya is the most important graha in the chart. So he runs the universe with his offsprings rather than Saturn. So as I said, Saturn is associated with death and decay, but then
it's constant, okay?
Okay, so Surya Narayan, he runs the universe with his offsprings. So who are the offsprings of Surya? It is Yama, the god of death, of course. Then Yami or Savarni. So she forms the river of salvation, which we call as Yamuna. Okay. Then comes Manu, who is regarded as the father of human race. From Manu comes Manusmriti. So then comes Sugriva. So he was the monkey king who was friendlier with the demons, but who sided with the gods to help conquer them. So he appears in the Ramayana, right? Then comes Jatayu. So he was the vulture who gave the great hero Rama knowledge about how his wife Sita was abducted. Ashwini Kumaras, they were of course produced as a union between Surya and Samajna when he came down to earth, where she was taking the form of a mare. Okay. So Surya took the form of a horse, and when they mated, the Ashwini Kumaras were produced, and they are regarded as great healers with tremendous rejuvenating powers. Okay, so these are the gods of healing. Then comes Karna, who was the anti-hero of the Mahabharata, who was born of Kunti, of course. So there are some literatures which will suggest that the word Karna means your activity in the Panchanga, is derived from Karna. All right, so you can see how Surya, he rules the entire universe through his offsprings. All right. So all these offsprings of the sun have the common feature of carrying further the divine mission of Surya, the victory of spiritual forces over materiality. Yes. So the divine mission of Surya is to ensure that the spiritual will always outweigh the material. This is very important to understand. Okay, so the real will is the spiritual will, and not the material will, right? So as the son of the sun, Saturn has the same basic effect as the sun in arousing the inner nature of the soul. So Surya is the Karaka for the soul. Surya is the Karaka for the ego. So just as the sun arouses the inner nature of the soul, Saturn also does the same way, because being the son of the sun, he has the energy of Surya. Okay. So Saturn spiritualizes, but not by arousing an inner urge to discover the real self. This comes as an after effect. Okay. So Surya pushes a person to understand the real self. Who am I? That question is actually coming from Surya. If one has a strong Surya, or if one has an exalted Surya, that person will always have that question of who am I? So Nisargadatta Maharaja, it is said that he attained enlightenment with that single question, who am I? He just kept asking that question, who am I? And the other things just started falling apart. So that is one way to discover the self. But this is not the way of Saturn, right? The discovery of the self comes as an after effect of all Saturnian afflictions, right? So Saturn causes frustration with the material world. It creates sorrow first. So the way of Saturn is the way of sorrow. If you want to experience spirituality, come and experience sorrow. That is what Saturn is telling you. Okay, without sorrow, there cannot be any kind of spirituality. Okay, that is the message of Saturn. It accentuates the nature of the shadow and makes the veil covering the soul's real nature more prominent for its restricting influence. So Saturn, it puts restrictions. And through those restrictions, we can understand that there is a lot of unlearning that we have to do to uncover the real nature of the soul. Okay, through the restrictions of Saturn, we can understand that the real nature of the soul is somewhere hidden. Okay, and that real nature is beyond all that we know, all that we have learned. Okay. So Saturn does not show us the ultimate goal at first, but confronts us with the limitations of the field, then follows the urge to liberate oneself and attain one's real nature. So Saturn will, as I said, Saturn will show you the limitations. So once those limitations, once those limitations are understood, okay, once those limitations are understood, then you will understand that all that was unessential is actually a veil which prevents us from uncovering our real nature. And that motivates the individual to search for the real nature of our souls. Okay, to search for our real natures rather. So the chariot of the sun has 7 horses. This is common. Okay, if you look at the allegory of the sun, you will see that the sun's chariot is pulled by 7 horses. They represent seven rays or the 7 channels of life current. So these are the 7 flows of the celestial river Ganges, or the 7 flames of fire, leading a person to his or her spiritual nature. So as I said, the idea of the sun, the agenda of the sun is to lead us to spirituality, and that comes from the question, who am I? That is what the sun is trying to, that is what the sun is trying to push you. It is forcing you to ask that question of who you are, who you really are, right? And that is what encouraged, or that is what inspired Adi Shankaracharya to compose that Shivoham, okay, that Shivoham Stotra, right? So these 7 rays, what Shivoham shows all things that we are not, right? Shivoham, if you have read the Stotra, to show you all things that you are not. It will not tell you what you are, but it will show you all things that you are not, right? And that is the grace of the sun. That is the push of the sun. That is pushing a person to uncover his or her spiritual nature. Okay. So these 7 rays show the underlying impulses which guide all activities of the individual during both the unconscious and conscious stages of cosmic evolution. So these are the underlying impulses that we go through during our evolution. Yes, during our evolution or during our own spiritual journey. So what are those things? So Saturn, as the son of the sun, has the same basic effect as the sun in arousing the inner nature of the soul. So whatever the sun is trying to do, Saturn is also doing the same, but in a bit different way. Okay, sun is bringing you directly to the agenda. Sun is directly, without showing you restrictions, without showing you limitations. Sun is trying to bring you directly to the question of who you are. But what Saturn does is that he puts you through all those restrictions and limitations. He crushes your dreams. He puts limitations. He makes you undergo a lot of psychological and mental turmoils. Only then you start understanding the real nature of the soul, or the inner nature of the soul. So both the father and son, that means the father is the sun and the sun is Saturn. So both the father and the sun have a same agenda, but Saturn takes a long time as compared to the sun to help you understand the inner nature of the soul. Okay, so the quality of the rays emitted by the sun remains the same, but from Saturn it is darkened. So just like the sun emits 7 rays, right, that represents the unfolding of consciousness. Similarly, Saturn also emits the same rays, but those are dark, right? And those 7 rays are will. So first it acts on the willpower. So working on the self principle in the individual, right? So Saturn first works, the sun or Saturn, it will start working on the willpower of the individual. That means you will understand that there is something which is known as will, right? You cannot move a finger without having the thought to move that finger. So that moving a finger requires some amount of willpower. Then comes wisdom. You have to work on the intelligence, right? And intelligence that is out of control is not wisdom, right? That is the difference between Mercury and and Jupiter. Yes, Mercury is only intelligence, but for that intelligence to become wisdom, you need Jupiter. Okay, then comes activity or thought, which arises from the activization of Mahala, cosmic intelligence. So only when that intelligence becomes cosmic in nature, only when that intelligence becomes whole in nature, then only you can perform some activity correctly, isn't it? And our thoughts arise from somewhere which is not understood as yet, even by science, isn't it? Science cannot tell you how a thought is created. Science cannot tell you where a thought goes after some time. Yes, so this is all a part of the cosmic intelligence. And once you understand thoughts, right, once you start doing activities, then there is the search for truth, which results in scientific pursuits and at times make a person agnostic. So not only scientific pursuits can not only make a person agnostic, it can also make a person atheistic. Okay, a person can lose all beliefs in, if you look at biology, it's a very hopeless science, right? You look at biology, it's a very hopeless science. But what happens once you understand that, that there is no hope, then you start understanding the real nature of our lives, of our, the real goals of our existence. For example, not for example, but there is a story of Pandora's box, which we all have heard, isn't it? We have all heard the story of Pandora's box. So when Pandora opened that box given by Mercury, there were all diseases and, all diseases and misfortunes that, that came out of that box. But amongst those diseases and misfortunes, one of the least or one of the unmentioned disease that came out was hope, right? So you have a false sense of hope and you keep on waiting till eternity and life will pass by and there will be a time for your death. So hope is cancer. Okay, hope is cancer. So being hopeless is a very, it's a very good state to be, because hope gives you, hope gives you time till eternity. It makes you, it makes you feel that time is infinite, right? Hope for a better future. It makes you, it stops you from taking actions to improve your present, right? That hope for a better future. Okay, the future would be good, but the future can be good only if the present is good, right? The future can be good only if we work on our present. And that hope is something illusory that is worse than cancer, right? Then comes religious attraction. So once you understand, that there is something beyond your material nature, you start going for religion. So which draws individuals to rituals and ceremonies in order to spiritualize and purify themselves. So all religions are only a way to purify yourself. Religion and God are, they are nowhere connected to each other. God is beyond religion. Okay, I've explained this in the Panchanga class as well. God is very much beyond religion, right? Religion is only a way to purify yourself by being in the company of others who have the same goal of searching for God. That is only religion. Religion cannot be synonymous with God. Okay. Then comes the artists who endeavor to merge themselves in the universal life by cultivating the fine arts in their pure forms. So suppose this is a very important distinction to make. Suppose you have an artist who can bring rains by by playing the flute or by playing the sitar, and you have a guru who is imparting spiritual wisdom to his students. Always go for that artist who can bring rain by playing his by playing his stuff, by playing his musical instrument, because that artist is more connected to nature as compared to the guru who has maybe thousands of students but is not connected to nature. Okay, that is the reason why Venus exalts in Pisces. This is the real exaltation of Venus in Pisces, right? There are some people. It is said that Tansen, he could light all the lamps in the chambers of Akbar by his singing. So that is what the God experience is. The singing was so good that fire came just to witness him sing. So this is what I mean by this line, right? And then comes mystics and visionaries who find the same spirit pervading everywhere, with differences being only a matter of expression. So this is common with all the gurus who have had enlightenment. There will be thousands and thousands of such people in India, but unfortunately, the ones who come on television or on YouTube will never say that the same spirit pervades everywhere. Okay, the ones who come on YouTube or on social media or on television, they will never say that we are all connected. Everything is the same. Everything is connected, right? This is something that is very surprising. I don't know why they don't say, but nevertheless, they may be having their reasons. All right, so we come to the end of the presentation, right? We come to the end of the presentation. I'll just open up this forum for questions if you have any, and let's see. if some questions come up. And before that, I'd just like to thank all of you for for taking this time out to join this interactive class on session on Saturn. And I hope that everyone had a good time, just like I had a good time teaching whatever I could know or whatever I could learn from my Siksha gurus. All right. So if there is any doubt, you are free to ask me. Even in the group, you are free to ask if there is any doubt. I'll share the slides in the group as Dr. Saab had mentioned. And yes, I'll see you tomorrow for the Panchanga classes. I'm just waiting for 5 minutes if there are any questions from anyone. Okay, some questions are there in the chat box, I suppose. Is there any option other than to endure the Saturn Venus period? Yes, there is an option. Okay, there is an option. Okay, this is a remedy. Okay, this is a secret remedy that no one will share. Right? Number one, Saturn, Venus, as I said, Venus is liquid wealth. Okay, Venus is your liquid resources, and Saturn freezes those resources. So if you have what Venus represents the bed, right? Venus represents bed pleasures. Okay, so if you are undergoing a Saturn Venus or a Venus Saturn period, ensure that you keep your bed messy. Don't make your bed. Okay, don't make your bed. So that mess represents Saturn, right? That mess represents Saturn. So that mess in the bed will ensure that your resources keep on flowing. If you make the bed, what happens is that it implies stagnation of resources. Okay, but that mess in the bed will ensure that your resources will keep on flowing. Is it a time to chant Kala Bhairav Ashtakam? Yes, basically it is, but generally start on a Sunday. Okay, start on a Sunday. And one more remedy I'll like to share with everyone. Suppose someone is suffering from depression due to Saturn. Okay, someone is having suicidal tendencies due to Saturnine afflictions. What that person can do is that person can take 2 bottles of wine. Okay, 2 bottles of wine. Take those 2 bottles of wine to a Bhairava temple on a Sunday in the evening. Take those 2 bottles of wine to a Bhairava temple. Okay, and offer 1 bottle to the temple. Okay, give 1 bottle to the priest to be offered as prasad, and the other bottle, all right, the other bottle, bring it back with you and offer it to someone on the street whom you do not know. Okay, one bottle should be offered to Bhairava. The other the other bottle should be offered to someone in the street whom you do not know. So this is a remedy that needs to be done on a Sunday evening for 8 Sundays. Okay, so that will help you to prevent suicides. Okay, that will be a great karma because you will be preventing suicides. And the people can cheat with this remedy because when people get troubled by Saturnine afflictions, they often take to drinking. So what happens is that tell the person explicitly that the other bottle that he or she will bring back from the temple, he or she should not consume that bottle by themselves. Okay, so that is one thing. Right? One should be offered to the priest and offer the other bottle to someone while returning from the temple. The other bottle should be offered to someone whom you do not know. Okay, it should not be a known person. Do this remedy for 8 Sundays on an evening. Okay, so this is the remedy for depression and suicidal tendencies. Beggars, anyone, but the person should not be known to you. That is the criteria. Okay. What is the best remedy to unfreeze resources, mental, financial, and even communication also? That I'll discuss in the remedial part. Okay. So I've just told the remedy for a Venus Saturn period. The other remedies I'll of course discuss each specific remedies. Saturn phase, you should not take alcohol. Nothing as such, Dr. Saab, nothing as such. You can, but at the end of the day, everything should be done in moderation. That is what life tells us. Excess of anything is bad, right? All right then. So I hope we have learned a lot from each other through this interaction. So I'll see you for the part 2 of this class next Saturday. And as far as the participants of the Panchanga master classes are concerned, I'll see you tomorrow at 7:30 as scheduled. Okay. Thank you so much. My best wishes to all of you.